back in the beginning, when I first started doing all of this, towards the end of 2014, making videos for this channel, I made a video called 5 Common Questions, and it was questions that I knew people who were contemplating switching from disposables to cloth pads would ask, because they were questions I had recently asked myself. And over the time, I've gotten so many questions. I mean, I made several videos that were an hour long each about individual topics that were just questions people had asked about switching, troubleshooting, you know, how to handle this whole way of dealing with your menstrual cycle that is completely counter to the mainstream disposable, you know, wrap it up and throw it away, or wrap it up and flush it down into the sewer kind of method that we've all gotten used to. So that's one of the videos where I've had several people send me messages, are you ever going to make another one? And I think I've assembled enough of the basic beginner questions that I think most everyone who makes the switch asks, that I think it's time to make another 5 common question videos. So here we go. This one surprised me because for whatever reason, I never had this question myself. So when I saw it for the first time, I was like, really? But then I saw lots and lots and lots of people ask me this question over the last year and a half or so. And so I'm going to answer it. The truth is, it depends on the pad. Okay, I'm going to show you the first one. This is a Schoon Organics pad. Okay, so you see the pretty design, and then the absorbent core part here, which is cut, and sorry for the sun glare on that, but this is the absorbent part, and it comes out, and you put it back in, put a clean one in. That's how these operate. On these, the plain white part is what sits up against your body, and the pretty design goes down into the underwear. And that's true for pads like this, for the Luna pads, whatever. The absorbent part is the part that goes up to your skin, and that's going to be the answer on pretty much all of these. The absorbent part goes against your skin. Whether it's the part that has the design on it or not depends on how the pad was made, okay? So on this one, again, the absorbent layers here, this is the part that goes against your skin, and it just so happens that on the Schoon brand, the pretty design is on the bottom that goes into the underwear, okay? This is a Yurtcraft pad. And this is what we call an all-in-one. This one has a hidden core. The core is on the inside, and so the topper kind of covers up the absorbent layers that are underneath, and then the back is a moisture resistant. On this one, the fleece, which is the water resistant part, sits down in your underwear, and the pretty design goes up against your skin. Now, for almost all-in-one pads, not all of them, but for almost all, the pretty part is the part that goes up against your skin, okay? These are what we call exposed core pads. This one is a Phoenix Rising reusable pad, and this is one I made myself. I'm trying to learn how to do exposed core so I can do a tutorial, but this one looks nice, but I'm not happy with it. So I'm not ready for that video yet. But anyway, so this has fleece on the bottom that is water resistant, and then this has a charcoal bamboo fleece on the top that's a wicking material on top of the absorbent part. So you can see that the absorbent core is right here, and that's the part that goes against the skin. And then the water resistant part goes down against the underwear. And it's the same with this one. You have some athletic wicking jersey on the exposed core, so you can tell this is the absorbent part right here. That goes against your skin, and this part goes against your underwear. So do you see why people might get confused? It depends from pad to pad, but usually you can determine by looking at how it's constructed. The absorbent part goes against your skin, and then the backer, which is usually a water-resistant part, and something that gets a little confusing sometimes depending on how the pad is constructed. So the absorbent part goes against the skin, and the non-absorbent part goes against the underwear. Make sense? That can get a little confusing, and if you ever don't understand, you buy a pad from somebody and you can't tell, shoot them a message and they will let you know. But the good rule of thumb is usually it's the pretty part that goes up against your skin, but depending, as I showed you, on the pad and how it's constructed, that might not always be the case. So there's no one blanket answer to that. But the one universal is the absorbent part goes against your skin. Okay? I hope that was helpful. The answer to this one is maybe, but probably not. The thing is that when people claim that you're going to have significant changes, positive changes in how your period manifests. It's because there are quite a few people who switch to cloth and they do experience those changes. And first I'm going to explain why some people do have those changes. A shorter period, a lighter period, no cramping or less cramping than they experienced before. In disposable products, there's plastics, there's adhesives, there's bleaching that goes on with the cotton rayon viscose to make it that bright, sparkly white color that everybody associates with cleanliness, when really all they did was bleach it white at some point in the manufacturing process. And then there is also the pesticides that get sprayed all over the cotton crops and whatever chemicals they use to treat the wood when they switch it from wood pulp into rayon fibers. Okay? So all of those chemicals, even when they only exist in trace amounts in all of the studies that are paid for by the people who manufacture the disposable products, by the way, when they find out that you have this list of chemicals that are present in there, and you have to think about where that stuff comes into contact with your body. It's on mucous membranes, the labia, and the vaginal opening, and pretty much everything down there. It's moist, and it's moist for a reason. It's a mucous membrane, and mucous membranes take chemicals into the body, into the bloodstream, a lot more readily than like the skin on the back of your arm or the back of your hand or on your back, etc. And so when you stop having constant contact with those chemicals, your cycle may change. If it changes, it's just going to go back to the natural rhythms that your system should have, where you're not being exposed monthly to those chemicals. And for those of us who wore daily incontinence pads, we were having daily, everyday exposure to all of the chemicals that are on those disposable pads. And so when you switch to cloth, you may notice some of these changes because those chemicals do have associations with all manner of reproductive health problems. And that includes periods. So you're most likely going to see changes. Whether those changes include a shorter, lighter, or less painful period, nobody can guarantee that, and nobody's going to know that until you give it a shot. But you are by no means guaranteed something like that. I didn't experience any of those three things. I actually have more cramping than I did before I switched from disposables, but that probably has a lot more to do with my back issues than it does anything else. But my periods are the same length and they are the same amount of heaviness. What I no longer have is the persistent skin irritation and horrific dermatitis that I had before. It was a problem that I had for a decade, and by the third month on cloth it was gone, and it has never come back. So pretty much all of us have some sort of positive story, anecdote to tell about what changed for us after we switched, but nobody can guarantee that you're going to have a shorter, lighter, less painful period. No. Okay? Just no. Now, here's the thing. The reason people are so hung up on this is because we have been systematically and persistently for the last half a century, the world over, and for probably millennia prior to that, because you look at some of the things that people believe in non-Western cultures about the uncleanness of the menstrual cycle, and it is absolutely unreal. However, especially for the last 50 years in the developed world, manufacturers of disposable menstrual products are extraordinarily invested. And when I mean invested, when I say invested, I mean money. Billions upon billions of dollars are invested in making sure that women are ashamed of and feel that their period and all of the fluids produced from it are so filthy that the only clean and responsible way to take care of it is to bleed into a plastic papery pad and then throw it into the landfill, because if you were actually dealing with something that was reusable, you'd have to come into contact with it, and you wouldn't be spending any money with these people. That is where the mindset comes from. And it is a very, very entrenched mindset. The first time somebody mentioned cloth pads to me, it was my dear friend. And when she told me that she used cloth and that I should consider it, my first response is what most people's first response is. And that was, oh my gosh, that is filthy. That was the thought process. It was like, I'm not going to do that because that's gross, right? We've been taught to be revolted by this process. And so let's just be more realistic about it. What is in your menstrual flow? Menstrual flow is blood and mucus and tissue that has sloughed off from the inside of the uterus. That's what it is. So there's a significant difference between letting it just sit around and collect bacteria and actually just putting it into a reusable thing that you're going to wash properly, okay? I have a video that demonstrates my washing process, and I can guarantee you that every single pad that I use is much more thoroughly cleaned and completely free from debris and dust and all of the detritus of the manufacturing process that gets on those, sterile-looking white plastic pads. My pads are cleaner than that. They don't have any of that junk in them. They don't have any chemicals in them. They're not swimming in chlorine and all of the byproducts of that. They don't have pesticides on them. They have been thoroughly cleaned. And so there's going to be a link down to the how to wash your pads video in the description on this. But let me just tell you, no, they are not full of bacteria. They are not unsanitary. They don't cause infections. They don't cause yeast infections. They don't prolong yeast infections as long as you clean them properly. Okay? So obviously, do you boil your underwear? Do you sterilize? Do you autoclave your silverware after you use it to eat? Or do you just put it in the dishwasher? Do you boil your underwear before you put it on a second time? Do you think that your underwear has to be thrown away if you have some kind of an illness? When you got bloodstains on sheets in the past, did you throw the sheets away? Did you boil them? No. And that's because you don't have to. We're not talking about, nuclear radioactive waste here. We're just talking about body fluid. And if you launder it, it's going to be clean. Another question that I get all the time, and this is something that I see people ask in groups where they're not necessarily asking me, just asking the question in general, is what do you do with the pads if you're at work or at school or, you're away from home? So, during the course of the day, you're going to want to use more than one of them. So what do you do with the dirty pads during the day? Well, I've demonstrated this before, but what you do is you take your pad. Let's pretend this is a pad that I've just taken off because it's soiled. You fold it like this, and almost every pad I've ever had, you just take it and snap it behind itself like this. So you end up with this nice little closed, mess-free packet because everything that you're worried about getting on anything or having a problem with being dirty is in here, okay? So you take it like this. And I have you can use a cosmetic bag, you can use a wet bag that was made specifically for this purpose. It really doesn't even necessarily have to be lined, but I do recommend that in case you do get something on the side of the bag and you want to clean it, and then you don't really have to launder it, you can just wash it out. And you just take the pad out, and you can have clean ones in here to replace it with. So you could take this into the bathroom stall with you instead of a disposable pad. Take this pad off, put it in here, get your clean one that you will have in here out, and then put the new one on. Does that make sense? And then when you get home, you put these wherever it is that you've chosen to collect your soiled pads until you want to wash them. And that's really all there is to it. I mean, depending on the size of bag, you put it in your purse, put it in your backpack. You can easily carry 3 to lots. I usually carry 3 or 4 with me when I'm going to be gone an entire day. And they fit very easily in here. And you can also get bags if you want to keep your clean ones separate from your dirty ones. They make bags like this that have a divider in them so that there's 2 sides. And many, many people use that as a solution. So in your briefcase, messenger bag, backpack, handbag, whatever it is that you carry with you, you just put your period supplies in something like this. You can also carry wet wipes, paracetamol, Tylenol, ibuprofen, that sort of thing, in a bag like this so that it's all together in one place so that when you do stop and go to the restroom, you have everything with you. It's very simple. It really isn't any more trouble than the disposables. The only task that you're adding for yourself is the laundering of the pads at the end. And my video, again, is down in the comments. Down in the description on this video. And my method is not the only method out there. There are other ways to do it. There are plenty of different ways out there. You can find one that fits your lifestyle and your laundry schedule. Okay? So I hope that answered that. It's really just not as big of a deal as it sounds like. And no, as I mentioned in my previous 5 common questions video, no, they don't smell. that disposable stink is because of the reaction inside the pad with the chemicals and the materials that are used in there. No, they don't smell. Nobody's going to smell this. Nobody's going to know you have it. Except in the rare cases of people who have a condition called bacterial vaginosis, I've never heard of anybody having a problem of that sort. Nobody's going to know what you're doing in there. Nobody's going to know what you've got in that bag. And it's not a big deal. I'm going to close out with the number one question that I get and that everybody gets from beginners who are trying to figure out, how to make this work for them. And that is, how many pads do you need? How many pads does the average person use? Okay, now I've answered this question before in other videos, but I think it fits in this one. There is no answer to that question that's going to be the truthful answer for everybody, because flows are different. Some people use heavy flow pads, some people use moderate pads, some people have various days, and people have a wider range of comfort level. I can tell you what I use and what I recommend for a beginner. I use probably between 5 and 6 or 7 per day. I typically will change out my pad. If it's on a day when I'm using cloth pads only and not using it in tandem with a cup, I will use between 5 and 7, I think, in a typical day. And so I always recommend that you plan on 6 per day. That's the way I think beginners should start, is just plan on using 6 every day. That doesn't mean that you have to buy 6 times every day of your cycle, because you can wash them in between. I typically change my pads every time I go to the ladies' room for whatever reason. Just I have accumulated a stash now so that I'm comfortable with that, and I really like having a fresh one on as often as possible. The mindset changes when you go to cloth, because with a disposable pad, you go and you buy a bag of pads or you buy a box of tampons, and you have a finite number of these, right? So you use them and then you will run out. With cloth pads, you never run out. You just wash them and then use them again. Does that make sense? So there is a little bit of a, I don't want to waste them kind of a mindset with the disposables. And that mindset will change after you switch to cloth. So there won't be this, I need to leave it on because I haven't used it up. Does that make sense? You're never going to use it up. Okay, so it's like, this can hold more. We don't do that with our babies, do we? We're not like, she had a little bit of a wee in her diaper, but that thing will hold more, so I'm going to leave it on her longer. No, we don't do that. We shouldn't do it with ourselves either. So pretty much the way I go about it is, now anytime I go into the ladies' room for something, whether I, quote, need, end quote, to change my pad or not, I change it out and put in a new one. And I think that you'll probably find yourself kind of veering that direction yourself as well. So I would say start with the estimate that you're 6 per day. You may never use 6 per day. You may use more than that. But as a beginner, kind of think, okay, I'm going to need 6 per day. And my recommendation is that you buy pads in the beginning that will accommodate the heaviest day of your flow, because you can always wear a heavy pad on a light day. If you wear a light pad on a heavy day, it might not work out so well. So I hope that was helpful too. But that's the answer to the question, how many pads do you need? Nobody but you will ever know the answer to that question as to how many you will need. But 6 per day is a pretty good estimate, I think. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I am doing a really good job of recovering from my back surgery, which is why it's been so long since I've done, a channel-related video. But I'm feeling up to it again, and I've been sitting down with my sewing machine a little bit, and I'm working on a video. The first one I'm going to do is I'm making a set of pads for a friend and member of the group that I've been promising her forever, and then I went into this surgery and just completely couldn't do anything. So I'm finally getting to that, and fortunately for me, the pads that she wanted are longer pads, and I've had many requests for a longer pad tutorial. And then also I'm working on making a pattern that doesn't have any curves in it, because that was one that I was working on before my back broke on me and all of this went to the toilet in a big hurry. But I'm back. I hope you found this video helpful and or entertaining, and I will be back again with you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.